Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I filmed here, so I also was not expecting to film, hence why my hair is wet. But today we are going to be going through all of the books that I read in September. So September was the month of Becca's Bookoplathon and also the new starting of the Magical Readathon by G from Book Roast. I got all of the books I wanted to done, but I started off really strong and then it kind of dwindled a lot. I think it's actually like the least amount of pages I've read so far this year. So, you know, going back to college just really threw me off. So there was nothing I could do about that. But just for some statistics, in September I read 2,537 pages across 7 books and 21.5 hours of audiobooks I listened to. So I read 1 contemporary, 1 dystopian, 2 fantasy, 1 historical, 1 non-fiction, and 1 romance. So a lot of different genres being read, which is odd for me, I guess. And 4 of them were adult and 3 of them were YA. So one of those books I didn't rate. 1 was a 2-star, 1 was a 3-star, 2 were 4 stars, and 2 were 5 stars. So again, also a lot of different ratings going on there, and definitely not the best month I've had page or rating wise, but it wasn't terrible. And so that gives me an average rating of 3.83. The first book that I finished in the month was The Heart Principle by Helen Huang, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, which, who am I? I gave a romance book 5 out of 5. Also, I vlogged for the entire month and I'm back at continuing vlogging, so I will leave all of the September vlogs if you want more details, because I'm going to try and keep this quick. So The Heart Principle is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient companion trilogy, and I'm pretty sure it's the final one. And this one, it follows Anna, who is a violinist who went viral and she doesn't know how to deal with his fame. And then we also follow Kwan, who is the cousin of Michael from the first book and the brother of Kai from the second. And he has always been, you know, a bit of a bad boy, and him and Anna attempt to have a one-night stand. It does not work, and they keep trying, and they just find out that they really like hanging out with each other, and obviously romance happens. I gave it a 5 stars, but it isn't like a really high 5-star like new favorite book. It is a bit lower. It's like, if I was like being really picky, it would probably be like 4.5, but I did overall really enjoy it. And I think the reason why this one was just, I could feel the emotion that Helen Huang was putting into this. And in her author's note, she does say that this is the most personal of the books that she has written so far, and I think you could really tell, and I think that is what made it a small bit more special. But this is definitely a lot heavier than the rest of her books, though all of her books do deal with some slightly heavier topics, but they are still like very fun and cute romances, whereas this one, it does still have a very cute romance, but it is not like steamy or anything like that, and there are a lot of heavy topics. I really loved the characters. They aren't my favorite. My favorite are still Stella and Michael from the first book. I loved them so much, and I did really enjoy these as well, but not as much. And again, I just flew through this. I read it in a day and I just could not put it down. And yeah, it was like when I finished it, just, you know a book is good when you like just have to like stop and like think about it for a bit. Then the second book that I read was Disfigured by Amanda Leduc, and this is a non-fiction book that talks about disability and how it is portrayed in fairy tales and media and all of that. And also interweaved in there is stories from Amanda's own childhood and her growing up with a disability and how that affected her life. And yeah, so I didn't give this a rating because it is a non-fiction, but I feel like if I was rating it, it would probably have been like around 4 stars, because I did really like it. I did find it very informative, and I liked the tone of it. It wasn't a super formal, oh, here's the facts, here's all of this and that. It didn't feel really strict and formal, and it just felt very conversational, very chatty. Like she was just kind of like telling her what her feelings were. And I really liked that, and I loved how she had those personal touches in there. I was just kind of like jumping around the place, and so she would be talking about one thing and she'd be like, so then this means that, and I'm like, where did you get that from? That didn't happen too often. Like it was only once or twice where I was like, wait, what? And yeah, but overall I did really enjoy it and I would recommend. The 3rd book I read this month, and I kind of forgot that I read it this month, was Furyborn by Claire Legrand, and I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I was really looking forward to this book, and I'm still looking forward to continuing the rest of the series, but well, I did have it as a 5-star prediction and it didn't quite live up to that, but it's okay, I'll get over it. This story, it follows 2 different girls in 2 different timelines. So in the past, we are following Riel, who reveals that she has these powers, and she has to go through some trials to prove whether she is the Sun Queen or the Blood Queen, because there is this prophecy where one of them will destroy the world and one of them will save it. And then in the future, we are following Eliana, and her mother has gone missing, and she is a bounty hunter, and she kind of gets involved in this rebellion in exchange for help finding her mother. Overall, I really enjoyed this and I found it very interesting, but it was just missing some things. So the big thing that I said in the vlogs was I found it very strange because I found Riel a fascinating character, and I'm so intrigued about like her as a person, but her plotline just wasn't drawing me in fully. Whereas Eliana, I didn't really care what happened to her, but I loved what was happening, like plot-wise, in that timeline. So it was very conflicting because I was like, I love learning about this person, but I don't care what is happening in their world. And then also, I don't really care about this person, but I care about what is happening in their world. So it was very strange. And I mean, I did still like Eliana, and I did still like the plot that was happening in Riel's world, but I feel like I feel like that was what was holding me back from giving it a 5-star. Just falling in love completely with the both of the timelines just didn't happen. I liked the side characters, I liked her writing. I found it a very interesting story because we were getting told things in the future timeline from Eliana, and it's like, did that happen in the past? And we haven't seen it happen in the past yet, and so we're building up to it. To a time when we like know all of these facts that the future knows, and I do really love that. I love having to try and figure stuff out in a book. That was also a really great thing. And then another one of my negatives is the world building / magic. I feel like it's a little unexplained, and I'm not too bothered about that. I mean, I still liked it, what I knew of it, but I just wish it was a little more explained than it is. So yeah, so 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm excited to continue because I've heard the second book is incredible. So then we get to the point where I was like going back to college / I decided to pick up a book that I knew I was not going to like, so of course it took me ages to read that book. And that is Escaping from Houdini by Kerry Maniscalco, and I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. So I'm not going to talk about this too much because I knew I wasn't going to like it. Everyone knew I was not going to like this. I read it anyway. I put it on as a joke for the chance card and I got it. And yeah, I should stop doing that because that's why I read the second book in this series as well. So I should just stop doing that. I should really stop doing that. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I did not like it, but it was an improvement on the first 2 books. I give the first 2 books 1 out of 5 stars. So that was basically like a huge success because I was expecting to go in, hate it, 1 star. But actually, I gave it a 2 stars. There were some improvements, but there was also some things about it that I still really hated. So, oh my god, I like completely blanked it out of my memory. Okay, still hate Audrey Rose. She is so hypocritical, so annoying, and not at all feminist as you think she is. I also despise Thomas Cresswell. He is a discount Sherlock, but he wasn't in this book as much, so I did quite enjoy that. Then there was the introduction of a stupid love triangle. I hate love triangles, and this was completely unnecessary because basically the whole first 2 books has been like all about like Thomas and Audrey and their chemistry and their banter and how they're there for each other, and then it's like, oh, look at this mysterious man, I think I might like him. And so yeah, and the thing is, the mysterious man was exactly the same as Thomas Cresswell, and I was like, you have a type. It wasn't as if it was like that love triangle of like, you know, sweet cinnamon roll and like bad boy, and it was like, no, these are 2 of the exact same people. And yeah, so that annoyed me. I still find the historical inaccuracies in it bothersome. So it really bothered me in Stalking Jack the Ripper because that is something I actually know a lot about, and it just bothered me a lot. And in this one, it bothered me so much, not because I know a lot about it or anything like that, but just because you could have written a book without these inaccuracies and it would have been the exact same story. Because you might be wondering, where does the name Escaping from Houdini come from? Houdini is a character in here, but when I say he is like the most minor side character, that is what I mean. He is like a guest star, you know, he pops on for 30 seconds and you're like, and it's just, and the thing is, it doesn't make sense in the timeline of his life. So she literally just was like, I need to name this book after something. She's like, who's around and like around this time? She, you know, typing away. She's like, Houdini is like, well, he becomes big in like 4 years time. So we'll just like switch around his age and what he was doing at that time in his life and just shove him in here. Just so I can name the book Escaping from Houdini. That is what happened. Insider knowledge there. Like, it made no sense. And it wasn't as if he was a big part of the story. He wasn't. I was like, what is the point of you writing a historical fiction if you were just going to make stuff up and have it not even, like, benefit the story? Like, it makes no sense. So yeah, and the reason it was 2 stars instead of 1 was because the plot was slightly better. Anyway, I'm moving on because I got a bit mad there. And the next book that I read was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. So, number 1, while I was doing research to fill in my spreadsheet, I found out Naomi Novik was one of the co-founders of Archive of Our Own, the fanfiction website, and I was like, what? Who's gonna tell me that? I was just supposed to figure that out while Googling some stuff for the spreadsheet. So we follow Elle, and she goes to this magical school where all of basically the magical children go because they basically, monsters can like smell them or whatever, and so it's super dangerous for them to be out on their own, and so they go to the school, and the school is also very dangerous because there is a problem with the wards for the exit, and so that basically means that when you're leaving school, you have to fight your way out. And there's not a huge plot in here. Like, there is a bit of one towards the end, but a lot of it is just very, just like chatty, day to day, very character, you know, driven. You know, Elle has been very isolated for all of her life, and people just kind of ignore her, and all of a sudden she is getting attention from basically the school's hero, and she is starting to like form friendships, and it's a very new experience for her, and so that's kind of more what the story is about than any sort of magic. And I really like that about it. It was just a story about her being very alone, and all of a sudden she has people like wanting her attention, and she's like making friends and stuff, and it's just, it's kind of cute. But she is a little jaded because everyone just presumes stuff about her. She has an affinity for dark magic, but she refuses to use it, and so everyone kind of just assumes that she is a bad witch, including the other character that has a pretty big role, which is Orion, and he also assumes that she uses bad magic, and he is just like a bit of a sunshine. He is the school's hero. He just wants to like help everyone. But their dynamic is absolutely hilarious because she does not want him to be near her, and he is just very skeptical, and eventually that just actually forms into a really fun friendship, and I love them so much. Like, that was like the best thing about the book. Like, their dynamic was incredible, and so there were so many fun moments between them, and I did enjoy the plot when it did come in. I loved kind of like the high stakes of it, and I loved the descriptions of the school. Because you get so much detail, and like that is a thing that I think a lot of people have problems with, is there's not much plot, but there's just so much description and all of that. And so like, I know you learn so much details about the magic in the school, and how it works, and how the rooms work, and how the void and everything. But I loved it. I loved learning about this magic school that has been made and is kind of messed up, and I loved learning about the characters and their dynamics. And so I can understand why a lot of people didn't love it. And then I think the other thing that a lot of people don't like is the writing style in it, which I can also see, because it is also a very like conversational tone. It is very much, oh, so this is what I was doing today. So I went to the kitchen, and oh, by the way, so the kitchen is, and so it's very much that. So she goes off on a lot of tangents, and It's very hard to like keep to the point a lot of the times, but I really enjoyed that because I think it's because that's like the way I speak. I'm one of those people who like can't tell a story without going off on like a million different tangents. So I did enjoy this writing style because it's very much how I speak. The next book, I have lost count, 6, I think this is 6, that I read in September was A Man Called, oh, I forgot to Google it. I forgot to Google it. Ove, one of the two. Or maybe it's the third option that I have not heard. But this is by Frederick Backman. I don't have any of these books with me except Furyborn because they're all up in college because I've planned on filming this video up there. And so I only have Furyborn, so I don't have anything to hold up. So this is by Frederick Backman. I think it was one of his first books, if not his first. And I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much. This is my favorite book of the month, hands down. Also, who am I that like the only 2 5 stars I gave this month were for a romance and a contemporary? Like, who am I? No fantasies got 5 stars. So this follows a man called Ove. And he is a kind of grumpy old man. He has his routine. He sticks to it. He gives out to the kids in the neighborhood for being useless and all of this. And throughout the course of the story, we learn a lot more about him. So he gets some new neighbors, and the wife of that family is pregnant, and her and Ove form this like beautiful bond, and a lot of it revolves around making fun of her husband. And like that's how it starts. And yeah, and so he forms a relationship with this new family, the kids in it, and also then just more and more people seem to, he wants nothing more than to just be left alone, and he just can't help but seem to like draw people into him, and it is so sweet and I loved it so much. And there was multiple moments where I was tearing up. Like this book had me all over the place. I had tears in my eyes, and then literally like 2 seconds later I was laughing, and it was brilliant. It's a really short book as well, and it is not my usual read, but I'm so glad that I did pick it up. I was, cause like that's the thing I kept saying, I was like, oh, I'm more interested in anxious people because like it's a bit bigger and all of that, but this book, it didn't need to be any bigger. It was just so well done, so well done. The characters were just absolutely brilliant, so well developed in such a short amount of time. You really grew attached to them, and I loved the way it was told. It was told flashing back to his like childhood and all of this. So for example, we're told like he's very stuck in his ways because he always drives this particular makeup car, and then we flash back. This is like a really early example, so I don't think it's too spoilery, and we flash back and we find out it's because his dad owned one. And so you're like, oh. And so I loved that back and forth, constantly finding why he is the way he is. And some of them were just like really funny and sad, and it just, yeah, I really adored this story. And if you're thinking about reading it, I recommend. Also, like, he did also definitely like remind me a bit of like my dad and my granddad. And so then the final book that I read in September was The Fever King by Victoria Lee. This book took me so long to read, so I gave it 3 stars in the end, but it was like a closer to a 2. I like barely got into that 3-star range. So I have very conflicted feelings on this, as you could guess from the 3 stars, almost a 2. So this is a dystopian, which I don't read a lot of dystopians. I typically don't like them, but I wanted to give this a go because it was one that I hadn't heard much about, and a sci-fi, which dystopian is sci-fi. Though this one definitely does have a fantasy element because it revolves around a virus that infects people with magic. And our main character, Gnome, becomes infected with this magic, and he is learning how to use his powers, and there's, you know, government, corruption, and all of this, and he's trying to figure out a way to fix the world, basically. And I just found this book so boring. That's literally the only thing I can say about it. And it was such a drag. I really had to pull myself through it. Like, like, it was so hard to like try and convince myself to pick it up because it just was not very interesting, and that is why I don't read dystopians, because I find that it's so much build up. Oh, you have to get to know the characters, how the world works, how the government works, and you have to get attached to these characters, so you know, so you can really feel the stakes. And then like the last like 10-15% it's like, let's take down the government, and it's just like action, action, action. And I'm like, okay, that action is great, but what about the other like 85 to 90% of the time when I was bored out of my mind? So that's why I don't read dystopian, because that's exactly what happened here. I found the first 85 to 90% super boring. I thought the characters were okay. I didn't love them, I didn't hate them. I thought some of them were more developed than others. Obviously our main character was fairly developed, and I could definitely understand his motivations, and I also thought that his mentor figure was also an extremely interesting character, probably the most interesting. And the rest were not that interesting, didn't really have that much of a personality, and they all kind of blended together. And another problem I realized, and I didn't realize it until like after I finished, was Victoria Lee has like no sense of time in this book. Like, I only realized it after I finished that like a year had passed through the book. They mentioned something towards the end about like a year later, that it was like a year later after he had like gotten these powers, and I'm like, how did a year pass? No, it didn't. Like a month passed. And I'm like, I feel like you're just trying to like throw that in to show that it's like realistic, that this is how long it took them to like plan. See, this is only a duology, so like I'm kind of like, will I continue it or will I not? So yeah, I'll see. I might continue it just so I can like finish the series, so I can say that it's done. But I mean, I just didn't love it, so I feel like don't waste your time on something that you're probably not gonna love. So I don't know. If you think that the second one is like way better, please tell me. So those are the 7 books that I read in September. I feel like this was a pretty quick wrap up for me. I mean, usually I talk for about an hour, and I'm only after talking for half an hour, so that is surprising for me. So that is all for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you do, subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!